Okay, we are going for a better done than perfect version of this podcast number 76. And if you're watching on YouTube of the video, you'll see my lighting is not perfect. Nothing is perfect about this. However, I'm very eager to share with you some of my favorite stories and nostalgia and information about the classic Nutcracker Ballet. And as I want to do, this may be being published a little bit later than usual this week because I have gotten carried away in the fun of researching this topic. I just have so much to say, and so does everyone else, about the Nutcracker Ballet. And so, yes, what can you do? Let's talk story about the Nutcracker Ballet. It's a winding tale. Let's start with some experts, actually, like I also like to do. According to Eliza Genner Minden, quote, every holiday season throughout the land, Mirlitons, candy canes, and other treats bounce briskly through the Nutcracker's kingdom of the sweets. The Nutcracker Ballet is just such an epic part of Christmas time for so many people, though I know everyone's not in love with the ballet. It has some controversies. It's true that some find the first act and the formality of the sort of formal dances and the party entertainments to be a bit boring, and some find that the second act's character dances can be a little bit, I don't know, racist, orientalist. And of course there's also sexist themes, but you know, those traditions aside, whatever legitimate complaints you may have, the ballet is now pretty much entrenched in the winter culture and around Christmas time, pretty much the world over. And of course, I can't possibly provide any sort of comprehensive or complete discussion of this amazing dancing phenomenon. But I'd like to share, like I said, some of the history of the original tale of the ballet as it's been presented in different locations, my own fascination with the music and the dancing and the costumes and all of the magic of the story, how I teach it to my own students, and I do hope it sparks a bit of your own childlike wonder, dreams, and fantasies, as well as your grown-up appreciation of music, storytelling, and the art of dance. I'll also be sharing some photos of myself dancing in the Nutcracker or backstage in the blog version too, so I'm not going to try to edit and splice those in here, but if you want to see little me dancing my roles in the Nutcracker, I would love to share that with you. So this holiday classic, back at the time of the book Balanchine's Complete Stories of the Great Ballets, which was published most recently in 1977, Balanchine said this about the holiday classic, quote, it is another sign of how popular ballet has become today. Many companies perform the Nutcracker. It has almost become a kind of annual Christmas ritual in many American and Canadian cities. Of course, this was not always so. We used to rely on a touring company to give us a truncated version of this full-length work, a ballet people used to call Nutcracker Suite, because they knew the music better than the ballet. Now that is all different. I have heard that more than 50 groups do this ballet. The one we do in New York every Christmas was first presented in 1954, and we've been doing it every year since. A little bit more recently, in A Child's Introduction to Ballet, this guy here, Lara Lee says, quote, the Nutcracker is a Christmas holiday favorite and the most popular ballet in America. There are more than 2,000 performances of it every year around the country. You'll probably have a chance to see it someday and maybe even dance in it yourself, since it has a lot of roles for young dancers. So let's talk a little bit about the origins of the story of the Nutcracker, although there's a lot more to say about that literature than I'm going to do here, of course. But the story of the Nutcracker is the book that I have by ETA Hoffmann that was adapted by Bob Blaisdell, and ETA is short for Ernst Theodor Amadeus Hoffmann. And in the introduction, it says, from 1776 to 1822, quote, was one of the most prominent figures of 19th century German literature and music. After studying law at the University of Königsberg, Hoffmann held a number of civil service posts, but his true vocation was artistic.
During his civil service career, Hoffmann also made a name for himself in intellectual and artistic circles. His surviving musical works, many of his compositions have been lost, include 10 operas, 2 symphonies, 2 masses, piano and chamber music, incidental music for plays, and more. Despite such prolific output, Hoffmann is best known for his literary endeavors. His most famous works include stories such as The Golden Flower Pot, A New Year's Eve Adventure, and of course, The Nutcracker and the King of Mice, upon which the story of the Nutcracker is based. The original story, completed in 1816, first appeared in a collection of children's Christmas stories, Kindermärchen von C.W. Contessa Friedrich Baron de la Motte Fouquet und ETA Hoffmann. Though Hoffmann did not consider it a technical success, he felt it contained too many adult elements for a true children's story. It has become a perennial favorite with young and old alike. I found a great video that I will link in the blog version of this too, called The History of the Nutcracker Ballet from the Dance Channel. And it explains a little bit more about the ETA Hoffmann and other versions. So it mentions that 1816 tale, as well as the story of the Hazelnut Cracker by Alexandre Dumas. That was the version that was proposed to Tchaikovsky in 1891. Now, a little bit more insight is lent on this Hoffmann story by Barishnikov's version of the ballet and its reviews, saying, quote, Barishnikov sees Hoffmann as a benevolent storyteller, a giver of dreams like the Drosselmeier this Nutcracker celebrates, that is the Barishnikov Nutcracker. His tales, says Barishnikov, are full of his own cartoons and full of his own incredible feeling about being an artist. In fact, Hoffmann was a frustrated artist, misunderstood by his public and unhappy in his personal life. His stories are riddled with grotesque and the violent, and they end more often than not in merciless, imaginative revenges upon fictionalized enemies. The benevolence of Nutcracker comes partly from the lyric strain in Hoffmann, partly from Alexandre Dumas, who rewrote the original tale and changed its ending, in part, of course, from Barishnikov's own fertile imagination. The revenge motif remains, giving this Nutcracker its most significant difference from all previous American productions and bringing it a step closer to Hoffmann. Clara does dream of getting back at the adults who have hurt and frustrated her. Also, the psychoanalytic meaning of the work's title has been clarified by the changes Barishnikov has made. But the grand difference is that for Clara, unlike Hoffmann, living well, or at least dreaming of living well, is the best revenge. So some interesting insight into the psychological ideas behind the stories, which I won't go too much deeper into, but there's a lot more to explore in that if you are interested. And I'm aware that more recently, a friend of mine from the University of North Carolina School of the Arts ballet program, who has gone on to become a professional dancer and teacher, also wrote a book called The Boy with the Patch, which is a children's book that is diving into telling a bit more about Drosselmeier's story. Now, the Nutcracker ballet history begins in 1891 or 1892. In 1891, like I said, Tchaikovsky was commissioned to do the work. In 1892, according to the Ballet Companion, Petipa the Nutcracker premieres with Antoinette Delera as the Sugarplum Fairy. That same Dance Channel video, The History of the Nutcracker Ballet, also explains that Petipa created the Sugarplum and Cavalier roles to dance the Grand Pas. Because in 1892, Petipa fell ill and had to quit the production, Lev Ivanov stepped in to complete the choreographic staging. In December 17, 1892, it debuted. San Francisco Ballet debuted the first American performance in 1944, and Balanchine's version in 1954 influenced many other modern productions. For more on Petipa, we look to Eliza Gaynor Minden in, once again, the Ballet Companion. She says, quote, for Petipa, the dance came first. He used plot and drama in the service of pure dance rather than the reverse. He was a master of the classical set piece, the Grand Pas, the Divertissement, and the Ballet Blanc. He's championed Tchaikovsky's music, then considered too symphonic and not sufficiently dansant for ballet. His works, Swan Lake, The Sleeping Beauty, The Nutcracker, Don Quixote, La Bayadere, Raymonda, are beloved and for many the very definition of the word ballet. Of course, George Balanchine and Francis Mason have a lot more to say about the Nutcracker in the Complete Stories of the Great Ballets book, but I'll just make a couple more points here today. They explain that, quote, the three scenes of the ballet are arranged in two acts. The first act, we are in the real world, but begin a journey into the magical kingdom of the second. He credits Lev Ivanov with the choreography, which of course he was taking over from Petipa. First presented at the Mariinsky Theater in St. Petersburg, December 17, 1892. Then first presented in Western Europe by the Sadler's Wells Ballet at the Sadler's Wells Theatre, London, January 30th, 1934, with Alicia Markova. This version was staged by Nicolas Sergeyev after Ivanov, and first presented in the United States in abbreviated form by the Ballet Russe de Monte Carlo at the 51st Street Theatre in New York on October 17, 1940, with Alicia Markova. Was first presented in the US in complete form by the San Francisco Ballet in 1944 with choreography by William Christensen. Then presented by the New York City Ballet with choreography by George Balanchine, February 2nd, 1954. Of his personal experience with the Nutcracker, Balanchine says this, quote, I have liked this ballet from the first time I danced in it as a boy. When I did small roles in the Mariinsky Theater production. When I was 15, I danced the Nutcracker Prince. Years later in New York, when our company decided to do an evening-long ballet, I preferred to turn to the Nutcracker, with which American audiences were not sufficiently familiar. I accordingly went back to the original score, restored cuts that had been made, and in the development of the story chose to use the original story by ETA Hoffmann, although keeping the outlines of the dances as given at the Mariinsky. A prologue was added and the dances restaged. Brenda Sneathan Mattox, in the Nutcracker Ballet Coloring Book, which I love to use for imagery in my classes with children, says that, quote, who wouldn't like to see a ballet with a trip to the land of the sweets in a walnut boat, or a battle between a Nutcracker doll and a mouse king? In some versions of the Nutcracker, the girl's name is Marie rather than Clara. Marie was the name of the character in E.T.A. Hoffmann's tale, The Nutcracker and the Mouse King. I'll share some more notes about the music, as I said in my blog version of this. I can certainly sing or whistle the music of the Nutcracker from start to finish and feel that each of the musical compositions creates an evocative experience that moves the story forward while celebrating each of the lands that they traverse. A few pieces of music in particular are my favorites, including the waltzes of the Snowflakes and the Flowers, and both the Snow and Sugarplum Pas de Deux. And I have also selected tracks that I will use in telling the story with particularly small children who aren't quite ready for the full version of the story and the music yet. When telling the story through music and creative dance in this way, I like to use a brief synopsis of the story sometimes, such as that given in the Usborne Book of Ballet and Dance by Annabelle Thomas. She says, quote, Clara is given a nutcracker for Christmas. At night, all of her gifts come to life. Clara rescues the nutcracker from a fight between toy soldiers and some mice. He takes her to the kingdom of the sweets where fairy tale characters entertain her. So the version I teach to young children or in a creative dance context has 6 scenes. In scene 1, we make preparations for the party. The guests arrive and dance. The overture of the ballet plays, which Balanchine describes as bright and delicate. Pizzicato strings and tinkling triangles create a light, intimate atmosphere that sets the stage for the action. Then, according to A Child Introduction to Ballet, in this scene, the story of the Nutcracker starts out on Christmas Eve at the home of the Stahlbaums. The family is holding a lavish party. The ladies dance in their colorful dresses and the gentlemen in their finest jackets, but young Marie is waiting for one guest in particular, her godfather, Drosselmeier. Some people are frightened of Drosselmeier, but not Marie. She thinks he is clever and mysterious, and oh, what magical gifts he brings. Handcrafted wind-up toys, trained soldiers, and spinning dolls. This year he brings the most wonderful gift of all, a wooden nutcracker. Marie skips off to bed that night with the nutcracker tucked safely under her arm. Just as she's drifting off to sleep, she hears a sound. I will also sometimes play the children's dance music, and we can do a more formal dance as groups. And for that, in Balanchine's Complete Stories of the Great Ballets, they explain Dr. Stahlbaum divides the children for games and dances. The boys do a brisk march, and then there is a polite formal quadrille for the girls and the boys. Some of the grown-ups join in. In scene 2, we have the arrival of Godfather or Uncle Drosselmeier, and the dolls dance. According to Balanchine's Complete Stories of the Great Ballets, Herr Drosselmeier, an old family friend who is also Marie's godfather. He wears a patch over one eye. He is a mysterious man, a marvelous inventor of moving toys, and he has brought with him 3 large boxes and also his handsome young nephew. The gifts in the huge boxes delight everyone, a harlequin and Columbine, and a toy soldier who dance to jolly tunes. Then Drosselmeier brings out a large nutcracker, a soldier, for Marie. There is a specific music for Drosselmeier's arrival, of course, and those doll dances that follow. Then we have scene 3 after Marie and everyone has gone to bed, the battle scene. According to A Child's Introduction to Ballet, quote, peeking over the top of her blanket, Marie sees a giant mouse rising out of the floor with an entire mouse army behind him. Just then the nutcracker sits upright, throws off his blanket, and leaps from the bed. He draws his wooden sword and raises it above his head. The Nutcracker and a battalion of toy soldiers battle the Mouse King. Although the Nutcracker fights bravely, the mouse knocks him down. Marie takes off her slipper and throws it at the mouse, who is startled long enough for the Nutcracker to recover and win the battle. While Marie is catching her breath, Drosselmeier appears and reveals the secret of his Christmas present. The Nutcracker is actually a handsome prince, and Marie's love for him has broken the spell. A lot more on that spell in that original ETA Hoffmann version than in the ballet. But going on from Balanchine's Complete Stories of the Great Ballets, quote, the tree grows taller and taller to a huge height. The mice are big too, and it is good that the soldiers are there to protect her. They battle the mice, led by their fierce king, seem to be winning. Then the Nutcracker, grown to life-size, rises from his bed and leads the soldier. Marie throws her slipper, which hits the king of mice by surprise. The Nutcracker runs him through with his sword, and the battle is won. For a slightly different version of that battle scene, which of course has its own scary battle music, which is the piece of music that most often causes toddlers to cry. So thank goodness after all that drama, we have Scene 4, which takes place in the snowy forest. Balanchine explains, quote, he arrives at the kingdom of snow and is met by the Nutcracker, who before her very eyes suddenly turns into a handsome young prince. He bows to Marie, gives her the crown taken from the king of the mice, and leads her away on a magic journey. In a snowy forest, snowflakes dance. It is a beautiful piece of music, both the Snowflake Waltz and Pas de Deux. A Child's Introduction to Ballet also describes the scene. Of course, the prince takes Marie on a journey through the snow to a magical kingdom where people from all nations take turns showing off their own special dances. And it is so lovely to do snowflake improvisations to the Waltz of the Snowflakes with all ages. That is just so delightful. So then we find ourselves at scene 5 at the Kingdom of the Sweets, where, according to Balanchine, quote, the Sugarplum fairy who rules over this kingdom of sweets makes a regal entry. She dances a charming variation to the tinkling Celesta. He elaborates, we now watch a series of dances by the creatures of the Candy Kingdom. When they are finished, the Sugarplum fairy and her cavalier perform the grandest dance of all, a pas de deux to climax the occasion. This is exactly the kind of dance that Marie would like to do too one day, and she and the prince rejoice in the splendid tenderness of the royal couple. So I will then, depending on the age of the students and their experience, will share the Sugarplum Pas de Deux or just the Sugarplum variation music, as well as Mother Ginger, Spanish hot chocolate, Arabian coffee, Chinese tea, the Mirlitons or Marzipan, depending on which version you like to call them, the Waltz of the Flowers, and all of that second act fun. Before we come to scene 6, being Marie's return home. A child's introduction to ballet says, quote, all of the candies then come back in as the Sugarplum fairy and her cavalier bid the young couple farewell. Marie and her prince step into a royal sleigh drawn by reindeer, and before our very eyes the sleigh rises into the sky and away. Oh, nope, that was Balanchine. Then we have child's introduction to ballet. Quote is also perfect. But even the most beautiful dream must end. The next morning, Marie wakes up to her wooden nutcracker beside her. And I'll play the finale music to accompany that. If you're interested in doing a full ballet or dance class to the music of the Nutcracker rather than telling the story chronologically, I do have a playlist list for that called the Nutcracker Ballet Class playlist that I love to use at this time of year. And in my blog commentary, I'll talk a little bit more about the imagery, other adaptations of the ballet that I recommend, including a more recent shortened video version and more. So look forward to that. But in the meantime, a few questions for reflection as you are thinking about the Nutcracker. I would love to know what versions of the Nutcracker you have seen and which is your favorite. Have you performed in the Nutcracker yourself, or maybe you've been in other wintertime productions? What holiday traditions will you enjoy this year? And what music fills you with the spirit of the season? I also look forward to sharing a video soon with a creative dance adaptation of a port-de-bras to the Waltz of the Flowers.